So got this one, got three, one in the middle one.
In general, calligraphy is a practice of using the Chinese brush to produce certain words in aesthetic manner. That is the definition of it. Calligraphy by itself, back then it was for practical purposes. These days we don't really need calligraphy. So it has turned into pure artistic purposes. And we do it because we like how the space is being allocated on a piece of paper by filling it up with words. You may not understand what the words are saying, but if you are a good writer or a calligrapher, even if a person do not understand what you're writing, by looking at your work, they should feel, oh, okay, it's nicely placed, oh, it's nicely spaced. That's on the entry level. Then as you go on the intermediate and advanced level, you're able to tell, oh, okay, maybe this word was not so suitable for this passage. Well, when we first learned calligraphy, everything looks good to us. Then only after some time we began, oh, okay, maybe this could have been done better. It started when I was 17. Ironically, I wanted to look for an activity where I could relax the most and not spend that much amount of time. I didn't know at that time that my school was actually extremely serious in Chinese calligraphy. I then realized that, oh, this it takes up much more requirement than I thought. But I developed an interest for it. Okay, the usual step is there's the traditional way of doing. There'll be people who would take out something called the yin and then 墨条, then they will 磨那个墨. There is a way to it. The amount of water that you use, well, it depends on how viscous you want your ink to be. However, this is less used today. There are some people who are purists and they will say, oh no, we do not accept instant ink. We have to 磨墨 and it will look the best. I do 磨墨 sometimes. However, due to convenience, I truly prefer the instant ink. The brush, it really depends on the style that you are using on that day. If you are writing something called the 楷书 or the formal words, then you will need something of a tougher bristle, one that gives you more feedback. Usually that will produce a better result. Now, if you're writing 行书 or 草书, it's more common to use 羊毫, softer bristle. The one that I mentioned before, the harder bristles, that is the 狼毫, 黄鼠狼, and they use the tail, the fur from the tail to form the brush. It's quite tough, however it doesn't absorb much ink. So it's good if you need the feedback to write something formal. Okay, script, 端端正正的. Now, as for 草书, because there are a lot of curves and turns, you would need a brush that's able to absorb more ink. And since there are so many curves and turns, you would need to have a brush that is softer. And therefore, most people use the 羊毫 when it comes to writing 行书 or 草书. Paper ranges from very cheap to extremely expensive, but it's not always the expensive ones that are easy. In fact, it's often the expensive ones that are not that easy to write on, because they absorb ink very quickly. It might be very good for painting, but as for writing, you might want something that you're able to control. So I would suggest to start off with something cheap to practice your strokes, and as you get more and more proficient, you have to not allow yourself to be too comfortable. Change paper occasionally so that you are able to adapt to many different kinds of absorption rates, and you have to look for something to write. You have to find a suitable poem. You might want to send a message to yourself or to someone. You might say, oh, I want this poem to remind me of certain things. I want it to remind me of being the importance of determination. So it really depends on what you want to write. You have to choose your script. What kind of script do you want? Because even though you have the poem, what kind of script is it suitable for? If it's religious, maybe you do not want to use something so cursive. You might want to use something more formal. Instead of 行书, you might decide to use 楷书, so that more people will be able to read your words. As you do it often, much of this preparation is done even before you start writing. Even before I sit down and write something, I have already done the research on what I would like to write. What kind of script will I be using? Probably the paper that I'll be choosing. So by the time it's time to practice, I can have all this prepared. Don't think I was motivated by a specific person. It was more of a thing than a person. I was motivated by the fact that whenever I write, I just think about writing. I will no longer have the problem, at least I won't be thinking of the problem that I have at work or at home or something else. After a while, I truly learned how to enjoy the process. It was initially just a way to block things out. Then when you start to see the aesthetic aspect of it, that's where you enjoy writing to produce nice work. No longer just to block something out, but to produce a work that you can, oh wow, it's nice. One of the things that I could change, I guess I shouldn't try to emulate the old masters that much. It is important that we learn their script. But let's say you perfect it. Then your best level will be their level. And even if you were to perfect it, when people see your writing, they will think that it's his writing, not yours. Until today, I get criticized a lot by my teacher. my words, I say, I think it should be written this way. Then when I show it to my teacher, I say, wow, 没有看过这样难看的字. This is like the worst writing I've ever seen. Why you use this word? This is horrible. And you have to be able to take it with a light heart. So when you are learning from anybody, always tell yourself that the teacher goes 50% of it. Only 50%. The other 50% depends on your trial and error, how thick-skinned you are, how much you're willing to ask questions, how much you're willing to make mistakes, how much you're willing to look ugly in your writing and get criticized for it and say, oh, okay, let's try again.